My name is Dr. Glenn Leslie, and I have the pleasure today of speaking with Michele Sapanaro, who has been a yoga instructor for 16, 17 years now. And we're going to be discussing yoga and how it relates to health. How old were you when you started the practice of yoga?
So actually, I feel like I started kind of late in life because I didn't start practicing until I was 42, and never had done the practice before, and kind of decided that I wanted to start practicing yoga because I was working out with weights and I was running, and I had 4 kids at the time, still do, but
Still
they
do.
were little, right? They were little then, and thought that that was the one piece of my workout routine that was missing, that I wasn't getting any flexibility or stretching, and felt that it was necessary. And I was a dancer and a gymnast when I was younger and was really flexible, but literally at that point in my life I was not flexible at all.
What do you do as a yoga practice daily, both personally and then professionally?
I'm an alignment-based vinyasa teacher. I also teach yin yoga, and I teach mindfulness gentle yoga as well. So basically I teach all spectrums, and that's what I do in my own practice. I don't teach anything that I haven't already practiced and kind of tried it on for size. And I feel like if it resonates with me and it makes sense to me and it feels good in my body, then it's something that I really want to offer my students. And I think as a teacher, knowing what it feels like in my body really allows me a better view on how to help others achieve the poses or whatever it is that we're working on. Maybe it's breath practice, maybe it's inversion work or whatever it is. But if I've felt it in my body, it's easier for me to translate it.
This is a very broad question, but I'd really like to hear, especially having been an instructor for as many years as you have, the health benefits of yoga, both what you've read, and I know you read extensively on yoga, and then also empirically.
That's a good question, because I think when we think about yoga, we just think about turning ourselves into a pretzel.
Right.
So certainly that's one of the benefits, that it definitely increases flexibility. It definitely increases strength. There's a component also when we're working with the breath that impacts the circulation, our circulation and respiration system. For me personally, one of the things that I noticed that when I first started practicing yoga, it really helped my digestive system, and I lost like 7 pounds the first year that I was practicing, not even trying. Just, I think the body just doing different things with the metabolism. Interestingly, over the years, I teach a range of students, so very young people and older people. I mean, I have my oldest student is turning 90 this year, which is so cool, and he's like amazing. And so in terms of benefits, like I've seen that yoga offers something for everybody. It doesn't matter what point of your life that you come to it, but it can bring something. One of the things, particularly as we're aging, I find posture. It's really helpful in posture. Keeping the spine healthy, keeping the joints healthy. We're moving in all different kinds of directions, so that's getting the fluids moving. I think it's really good mentally, particularly again as we're getting older, because it encourages balance. You're learning new things, so you're making your brain work in a way that it's not used to doing, and building new neural pathways. The component of mindfulness that comes just naturally when you're practicing yoga, linking the breath with the movement. There's a real calming part of that. It does. We know that it does reduce stress and anxiety. Working with twists and movements like that, I always feel like things are getting squeezed. Squeezing out the lymph, squeezing out excess fluid, and then allowing new fluid and oxygen and blood cells to come to the area. Lowering blood pressure, reducing cortisol.
Yeah.
I do think that those things also help people just naturally manage weight. If you're not stressed and you're not eating too much, is this idea of functional movement. Things that we do in everyday life, right? Like climbing steps, or getting up and down off the floor, or having to reach for things in cabinets. Yoga really helps us with that. Helps to keep those parts of us capable.
Yeah.
You know, I have an aging mom, right? So there, you know, as we get older, there's certain things that she can't be reaching up in the cabinet, or it's really hard. She could never get up, walk up and down off the floor. But my students that are older, like, they're really able to maintain that, and I think that it's incredible.
You mentioned one thing that I think is so important, and having practiced medicine for over 30 years, you talked about balance and the falls that elder patients succumb to, and the downward spiral that follows that fall. So I always try to do something with balance on a daily basis, even if it's as simple as speaking on the telephone, but going into a tree pose, modified tree pose,
Yeah.
just to bring that out. And also, you know, having wrestled with MS for the last 7.5 years, you're always cognizant of balance, and you want that to be as strong as possible. So,
Yeah, agree, 100%. And I think that's a good point too, like bringing the practice into your everyday life. You know, talk about balance when you're on the phone. I tell my students to balance as they're brushing their teeth because most people do that every day, you know, twice a day. So at least I hope they'll be getting both sides.
Why do you think there is such a gender disparity in yoga? When I go to class, if there are 12 people there, I might be the only male, maybe there's one other male. Why is that?
It's so funny you said that, because this morning I was teaching and I had 14 people in class. I had already started class, and then a gentleman, one guy walked in.
So you had 14 women.
And one man, who comes pretty regularly. I think in general women are better at self-care. Women think about, like, doing things for themselves, I think, more readily than men do. That's part of it. I think it's also can be intimidating knowing that there's so many women in a yoga class for a guy to walk in. I think that says something about your security in yourself if you're able to, like, walk in there like that. Chris was walking in this morning with 14 women. And I also think that guys have a tendency to feel like, well, I'm not flexible, so why should I go?
And we're not.
Right.
By our
You're-
musculature,
exactly.
we're
You're
not
not as flexible as women.
Right.
And my husband is one of the people that says that. Well, why should I do yoga? I'm not flexible. And I'm like, that's why you should do yoga, so that you'll increase your flexibility.
Right.
And I also think that there is something about the style of yoga. So, for instance, in a regular vinyasa class, you may tend to have more women than men, but for many years I practiced Ashtanga yoga, and it's a pretty vigorous and powerful. There's a lot of guys in that class. And it's very, like, muscly, so I think that draws men, where the other types of yoga may be less.
And what about age disparity? Again, it's not something that I think as many college students or young adults gravitate to, whereas they might gravitate, and personally speaking, I was doing other sports when I was younger. I wish I had done yoga in addition to those other sports. So there is an age disparity.
Yeah, I think, again, I think it depends on where you are. Like, it's interesting. So if you go around to different studios, like, different studios will draw different crowds. I do think that the age disparity is getting less because yoga is now part of curriculum, right, and meditation. So they do offer it in schools. Kids are being exposed to it when they're younger. Maybe their parents are doing it. But I think overall it's kind of a shifting landscape. I think that it's changing, and I hope that it continues to change.
Yeah. Is there a group of people that you would not recommend yoga for, or certain absolute contraindications where, no, this person should not be doing yoga?
So I feel like if you're breathing, you can be doing some kind of practice.
Okay.
Even if that's sitting down and actually doing a breath practice. I think that there are certain conditions, physical conditions, that students need to be mindful about where they're receiving the teachings from. Because there are things like yoga therapy now, and restorative yoga, and yin yoga, and vinyasa yoga. Like, there's so many different kinds of yoga that you really want to make sure that you're in good hands with a qualified teacher who's had experience with whatever it is that you're dealing with, to give you some guidance. Because I think that's where people can get into trouble. Often people will come to yoga, like, with back pain, and there are some, like, prescription poses that you should do for back pain. But if you have a yoga teacher that doesn't have any experience, that may not be the right lane for you.
Yeah.
But if you have a yoga teacher that's worked with people who have had back injuries and know that, yeah, these are the prescription poses, but I've worked with enough people to know that it doesn't always work, and I tried this prop or that prop. So I think it's very, very important to find a qualified instructor. But I do think it's particularly important as people age.
As we age.
And you know, the last 10 years I've been working with more elderly population. Interestingly, you know, those are my most advanced students because they're really working with challenges in their bodies and they're trying to figure out how to be able to do the poses comfortably. And it's also a challenge for me as a teacher. But over and over and over again, they will tell me how yoga has saved them, literally. Like they couldn't lift their arm and now they can, or they had chronic back pain and now they don't, or they're more cognizant about, you know, always stepping up with their right leg, because then that right hip is getting strong, but the left hip is getting weaker. So we encourage that, you know, they notice those things. And when we balance on the left side, and oh, that's weaker. So, you know, I'm encouraging them. So when you're going to step up the steps, remind yourself, take your left foot first. And it's interesting because you think people would be less likely to come to the practice when they're older, like people who have been doing other things, or they feel like, wow, I'm too old. I don't think so.
And that gets back to the functionality that you had mentioned before, that as we get older and our functionality decreases, this is a way to combat that natural trend.
But there's this saying, and I'm not sure if it's a yogic saying or if it's in part of the Upanishads or where I heard, but there's how many trips around the sun we take, right, for every year. And every year that we take another trip around the sun, our bodies dry out, right? Things get like vacuum packed, shoulders and muscles and fascia. And so, and we lose lubrication, right? And the joints don't get lubricated. So if we don't keep moving, and we, you know, that's how we're going to combat this. Otherwise, eventually you're just going to become shrink wrapped. So.
And that's what you see when you go into a nursing home or whatever. Everyone is hunched over and
shuffling, right? If they can even walk, because it's really even hard for them to lift their feet. As people age, their feet, like being in shoes all the time and the toes don't bend and the ankles don't move, and that's a real prerequisite for falling if you don't have the flexibility and movement in your feet. And so are you going to work on your feet when you go to the gym for running or for lifting weights? No, but in yoga we will.
Yeah,
so
every day.
Yes.
My last question is the role of meditation and yoga, or in conjunction with yoga.
So in my own personal case to start with, there was some very interesting manner of unearthing through the years of practice, like literally like you peel the skin of an onion. That's kind of what I felt happened to me, and meditation seemed like a natural thing that just evolved. Interestingly, many of my meditation students come to me because they've done yoga first. So I think that doing the practice of yoga, opening up the body, becoming more acquainted with
the breath,
and yourself, and what you're feeling, and what you kind of know, you start to know what you need. And I also think that there's some kind of inner searching that just naturally happens and leads us to meditation. Besides the fact that, you know, the yogis from India, I mean, this is what the practice was designed for, right? Prepare the body for sitting. You know, you want to open your hips because you want to be able to sit in meditation for a long time, not because you want to be able to do a fancy trick.
Right.
But even without that being said, the simplest practice, like rolling around on the floor a little bit, or just doing the shoulders and doing a little bit of breath work, it makes you feel more settled, like you can sit. And meditation just seems like a natural avenue to move to from practice. And it's been very valuable. Very valuable. And in the beginning for me, because I did Ashtanga practice for so many years, that kind of was like a moving meditation, and I didn't at that point maybe have an actual seated practice. But then over time, a seated practice made its way into my life now too. So and I feel they're equally as important.
So now it's just a part of your
every day
daily routine.
Every day, like drinking and eating. Every day I have to do meditation and some kind of yoga every day. And the thing is, you don't have to do it for a lot. You know, you could sit for 10 minutes. You could do a little 20-minute yoga practice. If I had more time, you could do more, but it doesn't have to be a lot.
So what we do on a daily basis, I think, does make the biggest difference in our overall health. I thank you so much for sharing your insight into yoga, which I've now been doing for probably close to 4 years, something like that.
Very consistently, I might add. You're a very disciplined practitioner. I mean, it's not easy to have self-practice. It's not easy to be as disciplined as you are. And honestly, Glenn, you're a star in your own right for doing what you're doing. So
thank you. Okay.